Hi, everyone. Um, Thank you all for coming. My name is Elaine Hsieh. Want to give you a chance to find a seat, settle, wrap up your conversations. Very quickly, like I said, my name is Elaine Hsieh. I am the Director of Community Engagement for the Technology Association of. For those of you who are unfamiliar with TAO, we are a member company based here in Portland, but we support the entire state of Oregon and Southwest Washington. We create opportunities for tech companies and technologists to create connections, upskill. We have professional development opportunities. We host a lot of events. And so I welcome you to, check out the TAO website and see some of our upcoming events. As Director of Community Engagement, I have several communities that I nurture and cultivate. They are the AI and data community, the cybersecurity community. I support founders, people in HR, Pride, and Technicolor. And I will tell you, of all of the communities that I support, one of the communities that I feel the most passionate about is my Technicolor community. Because, as we will talk about in this panel, sometimes you may find yourself as the one and only on your team. And so finding connections and finding community is particularly important. And I think that particular topic is very important to our panelists today. So I'd love for Dr. G on the end to go ahead and introduce herself and share her title and a little bit about herself as well.
Hello, I am Dr. Gwendolyn Avington, and I usually don't need a mic because my voice carries. I am the founder and CEO of Playtech Consulting. We are an effective communication business. We help people identify and remove barriers to effective communication. My PhD is in health administration. I spent the first 32 years of my career life as a clinical laboratory scientist. I still am what we coin as a lab rat. I enjoy research. I enjoy seeing what we can learn about our bodies. And I take that knowledge and I move it into the communication sphere.
Hey, I'm Phil, and I am a full-time introvert and part-time extrovert when I have to get up here and talk to y'all. Let's see, what can I say about myself? I am also a PhD. When I was much younger and didn't know much about the PhD, I always used to think, why do these guys put their PhD on their business cards? And after I got my PhD, I discovered why, because it's really darn hard and you're proud of it. You want to put that on your card. But I still don't put that on my card because I had that mentality before. I'm the president of PNSQC, and also I run a company called XPOsoft, which does software testing, very similar to Plus QA in the back. So I guess that's about all I have to say.
Hello, I'm Bear. I do not have a PhD. I dropped out of school at 14, although I do have a college degree. Went back later in life and got it in 20. Been in technology for a long time. I was a graphic designer, web developer, got into quality because I'm a geek over quality, I guess. I am co-chair of the marketing committee for PNSQC. I'm also on the outreach committee. First event I came to with PNSQC, I wasn't sure if I would be safe to be out there, clear or trans, and was welcomed with open arms and was supported to start an initiative called Out at PNSQC, which is really great for representation. But it's my first panel. They have to be here.
We're really excited for you to be here, and you shouldn't be nervous at all.
Yeah.
Right. And you're going to get the first question. Okay. So the first question is, when there have you been the only on your team? And were you aware of it? How did it affect you professionally and personally?
I think the first time that I realized I was the only on a team, I was working at a Blockbuster when I was maybe 15. Realized that everybody else there liked the opposite. And it was pretty apparent because of the way people spoke to me or treated me. I was told I was very early in life. So I just kind of played that. It affected me because it made me pretty fearful. I grew up in the South in Texas. So I was always very mindful about how I behaved. They tried to fit in briefly, failed miserably. So then I just became tough, I guess. Throughout my career, and I've realized that I seek out places that allow me to be myself and show up authentically. It's one of my core values and adventure, which I like to do.
How did it affect you professionally?
I've always felt like an imposter. I've never felt valuable. Always felt like there was a part of me, and no matter what I knew or how good I was at my job, it was always a question of my value. And that wasn't. I have gotten over that where 20 Justice went on a company for 13 years, which is where I got really good at quality as a developer, and that built some strength, that also transition. But I still don't go for jobs I would love to have because, you know, I'm not sure I'm
Appreciate you being so vulnerable. Dr. G, you want to?
My answer to that question is, when am I not an only in the room? Look around in this room. I'm an only. I believe in this room at this moment. And most of the time, walking in a room for me as a dark chocolate, I like to say, Black woman with a mind of her own, and now attach that PhD. Oh my gosh. It turns heads and not in a good way. I too was raised in the South. So being an only, I went to a school that no one time there was ever more than 6 Black people. And they were all kin to me. And when we were bused, we went all the way back to the country. We played at school and played at home. I learned early. If I wanted to be valued, I like the word you use, I had to step in and be my authentic self. And you could like me, not like me, just pay me. If we're talking professional, just pay me. It's all good. As I said, I noticed it quite early, and I had to get some tough stuff about myself. So when I walk in a room, I walk with my head up, not down. I move with intention. When I have spoken to people in this room, it's been with intention. You're engineers, you're developers, you're testers. I'm an end user, using it in the clinical laboratory for 32 years. But I don't consider myself in the room less than. I have a philosophy. If I'm the smartest person in the room, I need to move rooms.
I loved all of that. Thank you so much. Bill, what about you? Have you ever been the only on your team?
I think I'm always the only on my team. Geez, I grew up in Virginia, and in Virginia, there's that at that time. Now there's a lot more, but there weren't any Chinese. I was one Chinese in a high school of 3,000 people. And so I was the only, and used to being the only. You asked how it made a difference in my professional life. I think early on, I guess you could say my authentic self, and that I was very shy and introverted and didn't say much. And when people asked me to talk, I would just have sweat roll down my face. And maybe you could say I went outside of myself. I said, you know something, I don't want to be that anymore. And when I came to PNSQC in 2012 and gave my first talk, I would say that I did have lots of sweat going down my face. And I started enrolling in public speaking classes and taking every opportunity I could to speak in public. And so, am I still authentic to myself? I think so. I've just confessed that I'm an introvert. And sometimes I can be an extrovert if I need to.
So, Phil, you've given us some great tactics for people that are introverted and who may not like to speak, right? It's almost forcing yourself to do so. But when you're the only Asian male in a room, how do you cope with that? How do you manage that? What do you do to kind of manage those feelings and still be authentic to yourself?
Yeah, I don't really think I notice it because I'm just used to it. Like, look here. Are there any Asian males? No. Are there any Asian males speaking at any conferences? No. I'm just used to it.
So you deal with it just by virtue of that's the way that the cards have been dealt.
Right. That's the cards that were dealt. That's the environment I live in. That's the house I'm in. That's what I'm going to do.
What about you, Baron? How do you cope with that?
Well, I pass now, so I just kind of look like a white dude, which is a gross privilege that is very bizarre after crossing a gender line, being perceived as queer. I mean, I'm still perceived as queer, just a gay man now, but I think I just look for other people who are outside of the binary, or, you know, I've got pretty good guitar, so I can pick up when other people are around who might be on the other side of the line. And I'm also old, I'm 50, and I survived, and I should go to bed, and I didn't. So I just walk around knowing I made it. You know, and become one of the statistics I was told that would.
Dr. G, you can't hide who you are and what you look like and the skin that you're in. So in the last, throughout your career, how have you coped with being the only?
I think my coping mechanism is that if you tell me I can't or I don't belong, I get up and show you that I can. I identify opportunities to show others that look like me that they can be in any space. Right now, I serve as the District 7 Toastmaster District Director. There's never been a Black male or female that has done that for District 7. I'm a first. I'm often a first. But what I always say is don't let me be the last. I look for people. I have people in my staffing right now in Toastmasters that look like me, developing them to be all that they can be. Show them you can go anywhere you want to be. Business.
Are there any that look like me?
There are people that look like you on my staff. I also make a point of neurodivergent people. I have a staff member that is in a wheelchair. I purposely do that very thing because we're all human beings first, and then everything else comes. If we can get back to the centerpiece of humanity, then the world would be a better place. And I seek to be that change agent, tearing down walls. That's what I do. Tear down walls to race, Tear down walls to gender. Tear down walls to education. Tear down, tear down, tear down. If you think of Dr. G, think of tear down. I'm taking down barriers. Yeah.
So, Dr. G, I'm wondering, been in this space for a while, both tech and other spaces and places. Do you think things have gotten better or worse in the last 10 to 15 years?
You asked a loaded question. I'm sorry, you were ready. The needle, I believe, is moving, but not. When I walk in a room, it's almost like I have to give a resume. I'm Dr. Gwendolyn Avington, PhD in health administration. Oh yeah, I worked 32 years. Just walk in a room and just say, I'm Dr. G, I'm Dr. Gwendolyn, I'm Dr. A. Why can't I just walk in a room and be? I was so excited in your presentation that I sat through, Diane, because you said so many things that if people would just hear in the workspace about allowing space for belonging. I'm different than everybody else in the room. I'm uniquely positioned as Dr. G. But I bet if we sit and had a conversation without all the barriers, we'd find so many things in common, and it wouldn't have to be the only. It's important that I sit here on this panel today because I shouldn't be the only.
Bill, you've been with PNSQC for a while. Would you say that you've seen it change in the last 10 to 15 years?
Certainly the last few years. It's taking a lot of work. And today, when we looked out in the audience and we saw all the diversity in the audience, I was like, forward, as Dr. G would say.
Where we live in a pretty progressive and open-minded city, Portland. Do you think, how long have you been in Portland, first of all? I should ask that.
22.
22. Okay. So in the last 3 years since you've been in Portland, do you feel that it has changed, or has it remained the same? And let's relay that back to where you originally came from. Do you think that has changed there in the last 10 to 15 years?
So I feel like there are places like PSQC where I can be open and out and safe, which is awesome and wasn't around 10 or 15 years ago to be something. But my people are also being killed right now. So I think both sides of it are happening. In the South, it's pretty brutal. I have a lot of friends that are in danger now. So it's regressed. Maybe it's not regressed, it's just. We think the needle's moving. And I think we had a very long way to go before we're all just about.
Yes. Do you feel like there's a light at the end of the tunnel? Do you feel like we're moving in the right direction?
Yeah, because more people are realizing how bigotry and hate it's invading spaces that shouldn't be existing. Maybe there is a light at the end of the tunnel. More people get to see the tree go on. Pretty out loud right now. So pretend like we make progress.
Yeah. What about you, Phil? Do you think there's light at the end of the tunnel?
Well, I'm a realist. There's light at the end of the tunnel, but not in my life.
Dr. G, you feel the same way?
Yes, absolutely so. I think we take 10 steps forward, and then a group will come along and take us 5 steps backwards. And that has been in my lifetime, has been the ping pong of things, is that it looks like, oh, we're moving forward. Everyone's accepting everyone. And then you'll hear George Floyd was killed in the streets. And it was broadcast live, a live lynching. Terrence was beat up by 5 police officers. He's dead. He was a half mile from home. I don't often, as a middle-aged woman, go out at night because I don't know if I'm safe. And I don't have the strength I want. And I'm Black. And I'm always conscious. Still, I'm afraid when police officers turn on their siren and run past my car. I wish I could say that things were different, but we go 10 paces forward and 5 back.
I know that at least we know that those of us that are in marginalized communities or have some sort of intersectionality, we know that the work that we have to do, right? We have to walk into rooms with our heads held high. We have to make sure that people see us and understand. Now, how do we want our allies to show up? Because I think that's a big piece of it, right? So what do you think? How do you want your allies to show up in this space? Being is that for so long you've been the only, and it's to the extent that it doesn't even really, you don't even think about it. But how can allies support you in the things that you do in the spaces that you're in? Can I tell you a story? Yes, but just I had to mention that was white man that was in this position that I had in Toastmasters. It's the highest position in a district that you can get in Toastmasters. So I'm the top one. He told one of the workers to do a certain thing, and all this needs to run through me, another white man. And the man did it. And then he said, I forgot to check with you. But what he did, and I understood he was an ally at the time, is he wrote the man that gave the instruction back and said, you just got through being a district director. I thought you had cleared this with Dr. Gwendolyn. So I went ahead and did it. But please don't put me in that position again. She is our district director and you will respect her. It's in writing. It wasn't even, I didn't thought, this is an introverted guy. But it made him purveyance that I was being gone around because somehow I was insignificant, even though I was holding the top position in the district. That's how.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Dr. G. You gave me time to think about the answer. And the answer that was so hard for me to think of because I don't think I don't feel or think that I have any allies. And not that I don't need any allies, but you know, if you think about it, the Chinese are the model minority. They don't need any help, right? And so, but we do. This is nothing against you, Dr. G. You know, we run the PNSCC conference here, right? And I'm knowledgeable of all the other conferences and what they're doing and how they're trying to invite speakers and so on. And there's always a thing about, you know, they want to have Black women. And those, you know, if you're a Black woman and you're speaking and you're doing technical talks at conference, you're going to be invited. Let me tell you, you're going to be busy. Okay. But there are no Chinese Americans at any of these conferences. Do we get any kind of like, they trying to have Bill Luke come talk there? No. They have nobody that from the Asian American community going to talk to these conferences. And I think it's because we don't need help. Number one, they're the model minority. Number two is that these Chinese are all introverted. They can't talk anyway. Right? So the stereotype, right?
So I have disappointed my mom quite a bit because I'm the antithesis of all of those stereotypes. Very loud, terrible at math. I hear what you're saying because, even this day, it's like, well, if you put your head down and do good work, you're going to get a raise and you're going to get the title that you deserve. It's not worth that. You have to advocate for yourself. And for me, the way that I want my allies to show up is I want them to at least acknowledge that there is a disparity that is occurring, right? I think that's the first step is acknowledgement. I don't need anybody necessarily to be my knight in shining armor and speak up for me or beat anybody up or take anyone outside. But I do want them to acknowledge the fact that there is an inequity that exists and potentially ask permission to make a change, whether that's internally, whether that's procedural, whether that's conversational. But I think that is like the first step for my allies is to even acknowledge that my life and the way that I operate and the way that I enter a room is different than a white woman is. What about you? I mean, you've been in different places, in different spaces, in different states. How do you want your allies to show up for you?
Buddy's be a dick. Tell him to stop. Somebody is actively being aggressive, microaggressions, talking over people when they're speaking. Just say, hey, they were still talking. We'll get to you. If you're uncertain about a gender, ask. If you already know a gender and someone's misgendering them, correct them. That's it.
I also think we kind of live in this time where I think people are afraid, right, to make mistakes, to say the wrong thing. And I think we also as minorities need to give people some grace that we're all learning together, right? That mistakes are going to be made, that DE&I, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging is this ever-changing landscape. There's never going to be the right answer, right? It is dynamic. And so I think we also need to provide acceptance and understanding and allow people to make mistakes and provide forgiveness. But that's a one-time, maybe 1.5 time situation, right? If you were misgendering me, if there are microaggressions that exist and I have addressed them, it is, especially in the workplace, it is not acceptable to make those egregious errors and situations even more so. Do you have something to add to that?
I just would say, speak out.
You don't need a microphone.
But speak out, speak out, speak out. Oftentimes we see things happening that saying, see something, say something, means something. If you just speak out, I have many trans friends. I have many Asian friends. I will speak up and out if I see microaggressions. If I hear somebody say something that's just inconsistent to who that person is. I have many white friends because we cannot leave this conversation as it's just about people of color. I have been in rooms where there were white people that had the same microaggressions happen to them. who have spoken up. You can't do that. That's what's wrong with the world today. Is we allow people and we think it's funny. Some people are, no, we have to stop and we have to band together as a people that says it just cannot happen, whether it's white people having microaggression or implicit bias against people of color or the other way around, because I've seen it happen. We have to just say, stop, enough, enough. We're the human race. Enough.
Now we know how Dr. G is going to show up for her allies. She is going to speak up for them, which I greatly appreciate. How else can we show up for our allies? I know for you, Phil, that you work remote, you have a remote component, and that you work with clients.
Well, yeah, I was just thinking, the reason that there's no Chinese students here is because what you said, they're hard working with their heads, they can try to get ahead. But for myself as an ally, I work hard to increase the diversity of PNSQC, both in the attendees and the speakers, so everybody can just do what they can in their own little world, right? And try to leverage their own capabilities to magnify what they're doing as much as they can. And that's why I'm part of PNSQC.
How do you show up for your allies?
I'm always an open book, I guess. I let people ask questions if they're being respectful. I also correct them when they're not being respectful so they don't do it to other people. It's scary to be white and see diversity growing. And so people are fearful to step up, specifically white people. It's a very volatile situation at times to feel like you have to now be the only when you step up for someone. But lots of us are the only, and you have an extreme amount of power. So I'd say I show up for my allies to say I recognize the power you have, and I really love it used.
Yeah. Technology Association of Oregon is a team of 4. I'm the only. And it's odd because this is the first time in my life where I have been in group. And I have decidedly used TA's platform as an opportunity to diversify tech as much as possible. Because like Phil, representation matters. So if I can get more speakers that are from marginalized communities, if I can get community members together, that's why I'm so passionate about my tech and color community, because it is a safe space for community members. We co-work every other month. We have a barbecue in the summer. We do a professional development day. Really, sometimes it's just being with other people and not having to explain it, right? Not having to defend or say or act differently. It's just to show up who you are. And I always invite allies to be in that space because it's not exclusive, it's inclusive. But I also want people to know that there is the option. So I think it's really important to also share with your allies how they can show up for you and how you can show up for them. What else needs to be done for diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, especially as it relates to the workplace, right? So many of us will go back to our workplaces and spaces with these thoughts and feelings, but how do we help move that needle a little bit further?
So for me, I started volunteering with PNSQC in January of this year and met Phil and built a pretty cool relationship with him. And he offered me the opportunity to come do a different kind of work in quality and do marketing and sales at XPO Soft. So I feel like aligning myself with people who recognize talents and my strengths and give me opportunities that have been outside of my reach is a really great step for me personally and something that I appreciate very much. Yeah.
I think you're talking about, What can we take home? What can we take back to work? And I think a lot of us have some of these biases, but we're unaware of them. And I think the main thing that you can do, of course, is to work on yourself, right? And going back to work, or thinking about what are my biases when I see somebody. What are my first thoughts? How do I treat them? Those kinds of things that Dr. G was mentioning that she faced. And I think the biggest thing is just your own self awareness and being able to spread that through your actions.
So before Dr. G answers, I want to do a plug for two organizations here in Portland that if you know that your team struggles with this or someone in HR needs to be involved, because a lot of it is leadership top down, right? I would recommend Partners University, which is a subset of the Portland Business Alliance. They do lots of HR trainings, they do lots of events. And I would also invite you to check out Portland Means Progress, which is part of Crossville Portland. They also have free opportunities for your HR managers, for leaders to learn more and to diversify what they're already hopefully doing in the companies that you work for. Dr. G.
Homework. If you have no friends that are people of color in your workplace, buddy up with somebody. There's got to be at least one Black person, one Asian person, one Native American person, one LGBTQ plus person. Buddy up. Don't judge the book by its cover. Open it up. Please open it up and see what's inside. You might just find something that's good. You just might. If you give yourself opportunity. And I did say homework. So if you have not one friend that's a person of color in your workplace, go identify him or her when you get back to your workspace. It'll enrich your life.
Here. Does anybody have any questions, thoughts, something they would like to add to this conversation?
Now, with so many people working remotely, that's helped with diversity and with microaggressions, all that.
Great question.
Anybody? Or
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't. I think it took us back in time. Took us back. We were hid behind these masks, not speaking, not smiling, not making eye contact most of the time. So we must work we can wear our masks, and I often do, but don't let that mask be a barrier. So how are you? I'm happy. What happened to it? Simple stuff. It doesn't have to be a big, long liturgy, just kindness in spaces and places where you find ways to be kind. Grocery store, in your workplace, at home. Holler at your neighbor. That's a lost start. To say hello while you're walking in your doorway. So we went back in time, and it's up to each and every one of us in the room to bring us forward. We are not on an island unto ourselves.
I think that as much as remote work has been really helpful, it also takes so much more intention, right? Because you're not having the meeting before the meeting or that conversation at the microwave and you're talking about the Netflix shows and you're building relationships. So now it takes more intention to build those relationships and build that trust.
Question. I just want to say that the pandemic for me took me out
I think it was a really bad thing. For me, I'm a people person. Holy morale was everything. And when the pandemic happened, isolation for this person didn't work well. And I think for the kids coming out of college, it was really hard. I mean, I'll tell my age. I don't care. I'm 46. Like, no big deal. But for the kids coming out of college to like start working with them, like to not turn on your computer screen. Like, I grew up with parents that had their jobs from 20 years. Like, that's what you did. You had a job and you worked. Like, that's what they did. They instilled that in me. You know, you work hard. Like, listening to Dr. G up there. I love you, by the way. I love you. And I don't know, but like you and I were going to connect because I just started our own Toastmasters at our company. And you said it, and it was a big challenge for me to do that. But like, that's how we need to challenge ourselves. We need to get up there. We need to get uncomfortable. Like, Brenda and I went and did an improv. Like, I didn't want to do it, but it was like, the only way to get comfortable is to get uncomfortable, right? The only way to get comfortable is to talk about the uncomfortable things, right? Like, my partner is Black, right? So the two of us, we go out and she's 6'1", I'm 5'3". Like, we're the most odd couple out there, right? You know? But like, for me to talk to the younger generation that I work with, and when they don't turn on their screens, and I've been brought up to be in an office where we sit around and we talk about the hard stuff and we whiteboard, and then all of a sudden just take that back, and now we have to be like remote. So I turn on my screen and they don't. And it's like, the only way I'm going to get to know you is if I can look in your eyes, you know, and to be honest with you. And you're not doing that. And like, how do I go to their manager and say, can you tell them to turn on their screen? Can you tell them like this is how we have to get through the hard stuff? I have, but like, it's like when do I step back? You know, I have a place of like, I'm from Boston. I'm an East Coaster, so we're really aggressive. We're not passive aggressive. We're just aggressive, right? We're on the East Coast, right? You know, so I've been doing. That's why I'm in Toastmasters, right? And it's like, but I've learned to be like, okay, I don't interrupt anymore. But it's like, I'm not sitting in a meeting to call a meeting for the last meeting we were in. But it's like, what I'm in a sticky situation to be. I'm 46. I'm working with 23, 25-year-old developers. I don't want to burn a band-aid fix. I want to fix, you know? And if you can't turn on your camera and if we can't talk about it, and if you're going to take it to heart that I'm calling you out, yeah. Meetings are rules for meeting. Right. Yeah. Yeah. So my rules, if you're going to play my game, you're going to play the points. I need you guys to just. It's up to them. And I know so much. I get that juice.
First off, thank you, all of you, and everybody who's spoken in the audience. It's I always think that I'm up on the topic and I understand the problems, and every time I come to one of these, I learn how I'm not. So it's just a great reminder of all the work that we still have to do. So thank you, but in line with that. And in line with the fact that there are those of us who really want to be great allies. We want to be helping these communities in that we're not even sure like what the right way is to do that. So from your perspectives, as far as, I mean, in addition to the things that you've mentioned today, when you talk about amplifying minority voices and really helping these communities shine and like giving them a place, right? Finding that space. Are there some recommendations that you have in how to best approach that and best do that so that it's not just adding to the problem, right? Because I think some of us try to go out and try to make way in this and try to have the conversations and try to create the space, but then we oftentimes end up taking it away from that and then focusing on us. And that's not what we want, right? So what's the best way from your perspectives to really amplify your voices?
Go ahead, Doc.
I would say two things. One is make sure in your workspaces, if you don't have it, start having a quarterly meeting to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, belonging, because you have to start the conversation somewhere. The secondary thing I'd say is look around in your workspace. If you're a hiring manager, look around and see if you've really diversified your workspace. For every 2 white people, do you have at least one person of color, male or female? Because most people of color are just looking for an opportunity. And it's oftentimes up to white voices to open the door. We're knocking. Those would be 2 suggestions.
It's a very tricky question. Thank you for asking it. It's very complex. I think it's okay in spaces that you take up space to when you're speaking up for other people. I think being educated on what they're actually experiencing, not the rhetoric that's fed to all of us, the bullshit, the real stuff. And sometimes it's more valuable to speak from your heart about how you're impacted by what you see, especially with people who look like you, because they can hear you, because you're not asking them to think like someone else. So center the experience of the other person, but filter it through yourself because you need them to hear you. We need them to hear you. So I think it's a lot of homework you have to do to figure it out. But the balance is just you be authentic too. And if you see something that's beautiful that other people are experiencing, just be honest about it.
We're going to take 2 more quick questions. Mine is more of a comment. I know that it's very hard for people to speak up and have those tough conversations. So a little thing that I did with myself and what I'm doing with my friends is taking little steps. First, I try to say no because it is difficult to just say no. And realizing that when you say that, that other person doesn't freak out. And you're like, okay, I feel comfortable with that. Now I can move on to maybe something a little more in depth rather than just no. I've been practicing that with my older friends, like, okay, we're going to have an exercise. I'm going to ask you to do these things. I want you to tell me no. And sometimes they do it. Sometimes they're still like, oh, I can't. So I've noticed just with those baby steps, it's helped me grow and become more confident in speaking up.
I got one more. This thing takes me a while to think about things. You're asking about what you can do inside your organization. Maybe you can make sure that the DEI effort is not an island, but that they have a seat at the high table, is what I would say. At BNSQC, I mentioned this morning that we have an outreach committee. And the outreach committee is part of the board in all of our general management meetings. They're not doing their own thing. I mean, of course they are also, but they're part of the high table.
One last question.
Well, no, that's exactly a question. I wish I were better at questions. Yeah. But for me, it's about getting comfortable with making the mistake. Misgendering somebody and having them correct me. And being able to say, I'm sorry, that was, I wish I had known better. Right. And just getting comfortable with being willing to be wrong. Because Rachel, who gave the presentation a while ago, said, we learn from our mistakes, right? So if we're not out there willing to make those mistakes on behalf of valued colleagues, valued friends, people that we want the world to welcome, when are we going to be okay with making mistakes? I mean, that's a worthy cause for making mistakes and learn. And then my message, learn from it. Remember what you hear and learn from it. I have a friend that I had known for many, 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 many years. I have a very strong habit of gendering them in one way. And they've made a change. And now, over and over again, I have to be corrected and I just get more and more abject in my apologies because I know I need to do better. And, this was it John Lewis, when you know better, you do better. Right.
I would say all of you being here is a great first step, right?
Absolutely.
Yes. So let's give our panelists a great round of applause.